37% of them feel the country's problems have gotten so bad we're now in danger of failing as a nation as we come up on our 250th year anniversary.
That's right. Psychologist and author Dr. Jordan Peterson is here to react. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. What is your reaction to this?
Well, I think if you spend 40 years demoralizing people, that it works. And we've spent probably more than 40 years. Since the mid-60s, we've been on a campaign to demoralize people. I think it started with the Club of Rome types who claimed that the world was overpopulated and that we were all headed to hell in a handbasket, and there's no evidence that any of that is true. I mean, the idea was that by the year 2000, everyone would be starving to death and that commodity prices would shoot through the roof and that the planet couldn't tolerate 3 billion people or 4 billion people, and all that turned out to be utter nonsense. We're richer worldwide than we ever were before. There's absolutely no shortage of resources. Commodity prices have gone down. There were world record harvests this year, and all you ever hear is doom and gloom.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been thinking about that a lot, and because I tend to think about things psychologically, obviously, and my sense is that people who want to garner power to themselves use fear. And I think that's how you can tell real leaders from wannabe tyrants, is that if they're trying to terrorize you into granting them all the power, then they're essentially tyrants and not leaders. And you see that happening everywhere.
Jordan, who are the 35% who think we're on the right track?
Well,
who are those people?
They're probably people who are temperamentally optimistic. You know, I mean, some of what determines people's attitudes about the future varies with the circumstances, but some people, you know, they're so optimistic by central temperament that even if they're in a crisis, they're not going to be upset. So
that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, they also tend to be conservatives because we know as well that the most unhappy people are liberal men, and then I think the next most unhappy people are liberal women. And so, well, so the happy ones are optimistic, and they tend to be conservative.
I know you told me you spend time in Boston, a lot of time in Boston, but you're
yeah.
Canadian, but you spend a lot of time in America, so you got a sense of both. So is your sense that America feels negative about our own country because of a deliberate plot to make us not like what we have, feel guilty for what we've obtained, to resent our past? Or is this something that just happened? Or do you think it's someone scripting this?
Well, I think there's two things that are happening. Is that the culture war is a war between systems of ideas, and it's essentially a war between the ideas that are part and parcel of the classic Western tradition that's grounded in the biblical corpus, essentially, so Judeo-Christian culture, and the counter-reaction to that, which is kind of what post-Enlightenment Marxism. And so you have a war between two sets of ideas. But then you also have people who are acting directly in, you know, a quasi-conspiratorial manner. The Club of Rome types, for example, from the 1960s, who decided back then that, like as I said earlier, that the planet is going to hell in a handbasket and that something has to be done about that emergency. And so,
we're the problem.
We're the problem, yeah. There's too
how
many human beings on the planet. That's a good way of identifying people who are definitely not your allies. If people who think there are too many people on the planet, that is not a good thing to think. That's like something with that's got genocidal implications.
Can I just ask you, just about our country in particular, there's so much to like. We used to be a country that was too boastful, where people were like, enough with America being the greatest, and we walk on water and we didn't see our problems. Now all we see is problems. Like, what happened to that school of thought where your team was the best team? And the problem maybe for critics would be the arrogance of Americans. Now we have no self-esteem and we want to apologize to everybody. When did that happen, or do you not see it?
I think that emerged out of the 60s as well. I think the universities had a lot to do with that. There's the left-wing tyrannical types are particularly good at manipulating guilt, and that actually works quite well on conservatives because conservatives tend to be more conscientious. And so if you accuse a conservative of moral impropriety on the guilt front, they're likely to take that seriously.